Hello, neighbor. Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately as we go through life, and I'm working in the garage or just doing things at home. And what I've experienced over the past few weeks is that God has promised to be our provider. Now, He provides for us in a lot of different ways, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. God has promised to be our provider. There's two examples in the Old Testament that I've been thinking about a lot, and the first one is Abraham when he's called to go and sacrifice his son Isaac. God had promised that son to him, and then God asked him to go and sacrifice him, and Abraham obeyed. He obediently took Isaac and went to the mountain, prepared to sacrifice him, believing that if he even followed through with it, God would raise him from the dead, because Isaac was the promised son that God had told him that he would have as the beginning to be the father of many nations. In the end, God provided a ram instead of Abraham needing to sacrifice his son Isaac. But in Abraham's obedience, he saw God provide what needed to be provided. The second one is the Israelites after they were taken out of captivity in Egypt, and they were now entering into the promised land that God had told them He would give them, and they were afraid. They became frightened. They didn't believe God would do what He said He would do. Because of the challenges that they were going to face, or that they thought they would face in entering the promised land, and so they fled. They were scared, and they didn't follow through on what God had told them to do, and they spent 40 years in the wilderness. And even in the midst of that, because of their sinful disobedience, they suffered the consequences of that, living in the wilderness, and that generation never got to see the promised land. But even in the midst of that, God daily provided for them what they needed physically to sustain themselves with manna and food from heaven. So God is a gracious God. That to me just says, wow, like who does that? God is a very gracious God. He took care of them even in the midst of their sinfulness. And God is still that gracious God today. You know, ultimately God has provided Jesus Christ, His Son, to be our sacrifice, the sacrificial lamb that took away the sins of the world. He came in our place so that we didn't have to suffer the consequences of that. And if we put our faith and trust and hope in Him, we will live for eternity in heaven with Him. Not of our own accord, but because God provided the lamb that we needed to take away the sins of the world and to give us an eternity with Him and not in hell. But the verses that I've been thinking about, and they kind of correlate more so with financial or daily need provision. But the verse is Philippians 4:19, and it says this, "And my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches and glory in Christ Jesus." And this is Paul writing this. He's thanking them, the Philippians, for contributing to his needs. But Paul before that says that he has learned to be content in whatever circumstance that he finds himself to be in, whether it's with little or plenty. And when he had little, he didn't stray from what God had called him to do and to go think, well, I don't have a lot, so now I need to go figure out what else I can do to provide more. And when he had a lot, he didn't stray thinking, well, I'm just going to live my life and enjoy what I have. He continued on the journey and the path that God had called him to as an apostle of Jesus Christ. And something that I would like to say, and maybe have learned a little bit, still definitely learning it, is that no matter where we find ourselves in our circumstances, whether it's a financial need or abundance, or if we are going through something terribly difficult relationally. We don't have the wife or boyfriend or husband or whatever it is that we think we need, or the job that we think we need, the comfort that we think we need. Instead of going out and trying to find those things on our own, or doing things that don't please God to fulfill that need, it can bring about some dire circumstances. I can't say I have done this all the time by any means, but when I have trusted God to provide for what I need, He truly provides what I need and not what I think I need. If I think I need comfort, I'm not going to find it in something outside of Christ or something that He has provided me to find comfort in, though we try to do that all the time, whether it be in food, pornography. We go to the man or the woman to provide for us in a way that we shouldn't. We try to find a job that maybe pays for but takes us out of a place that God has called us to be. There's all kinds of things that we can do that we try to take care of ourselves in ways that God doesn't want us to. And it takes those things then take the place of Him, and they ultimately become like idols in our lives, and we turn to them for what God has promised to give us. Now, maybe we think we need a boyfriend, a girlfriend, money, whatever it is. Maybe that's not really what we need. Maybe what we need is just waiting around the corner, and what we really need is the presence of God in our lives. And when we get in the Word and He begins to reveal Himself to us, maybe all we need is His comfort, a word of encouragement from the Scriptures, something that keeps us going. God is a good, good Father. Every good and perfect gift we have comes from Him. And I know from experience and from what the Word says, that if we put our trust and our faith and our reliance upon Him, He will give us what we need. It might not be what we think we need or necessarily what we want at the time, but God will give us what we need because He has a bigger picture. He understands what's going on more than we do, and maybe He's just looking for our development and our trust in Him and our faith to grow as we go through things where we don't have what we think we need, but He has a bigger picture. He has a plan, and He's trying to accomplish something far beyond what we could ever ask or imagine. So I would encourage you, if you find yourself in a place of need, in whatever capacity that is, turn to Him, turn to Christ, turn to the Scriptures, find out what He has to say in His Word. Trust in Him to provide for what you need. A lot of times He does provide. Sometimes it's just a word of encouragement, His presence, a deeper relationship with Him. A lot of times though, if we have physical needs, He does provide them in due time. But in the process of getting to that place, He has a bigger picture in mind and a greater purpose. So I would encourage you to trust in that process, trust in Him, be encouraged that we're all going through something at some point or another. But God is a faithful God, and He has promised to accomplish what He has set out to do. So trust in Him to get you to where you need to go. Don't rely on your own circumstances or on yourself. We cannot do it alone, and oftentimes we can end up making things worse. But God, even then, in His grace, does promise to take care of us. We all are like sheep who have gone astray, and He continues to take care and provide for us just as a shepherd would his sheep. So I pray this blesses you and encourages you today, because I know that God is our provider. it's just one of the biggest encouragements of God's character to me specifically in this time of life. Have a good day.